It started on an ordinary Tuesday, the kind of day that slides past unnoticed. I had just come back from school, dumped my bag by the door, and headed to my room to untangle the mess of hair and homework. The air in my bedroom smelled faintly of lavender and dust, like it always did. I turned the corner, flipped on the light above the vanity, and froze. There it was, my mirror. Same old rectangular frame, peeling white paint along the edges, resting on a dresser covered in my clutter. Half-used lip balm, crumpled Polaroids, a few curling ribbons. I leaned in and ran a hand through my hair, catching sight of a red bow I hadn't worn in years. I picked it up, tied it in loosely, and smiled at my reflection. That's when it happened. I looked away, just for a second, to straighten the mess of photo frames. When I glanced back up, my reflection was still smiling. My own face stared back, lips curled up as if I were still happy. But I wasn't. I wasn't even looking. I blinked. The smile didn't move. A cold shiver crawled across my spine. I leaned in closer. Maybe I had imagined it. The mirror was old, a thrift store find from years ago. Sometimes glass warps, sometimes shadows play tricks. I slowly raised my hand, fingers spread, and the girl in the glass did the same. Just a beat too late, just enough to notice. I stood there, studying myself, or what I thought was myself. Every movement, a head tilt, a blink, a shift of the mouth, came with a faint delay. Not always, not consistent, but enough to make me feel like I wasn't alone in that room. Like someone was behind the glass, pretending to be me, trying to keep up. I told myself I was being ridiculous. The mind gets weird when it's tired. But that night, lying in bed with the light from the hallway slicing a soft glow across my wall, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her, that not quite me reflection, standing just behind the glass, waiting. Around midnight, I got up to use the bathroom. On my way back, I paused in my doorway. The vanity light was off, but the mirror was glowing. Not brightly, just a faint shimmer, like the moonlight was hitting it from an angle it shouldn't. I stepped closer. The room was silent except for the soft hum of the house settling. I stared into the mirror, normal. Me, standing in my room. Me, tired, curious, afraid. And then, the smile returned. It happened again. That same, wrong smile. Too wide, too long. My face, but not. I didn't move. I didn't blink. But she did. The grin stretched slowly, almost hungry. My hands shook. I whispered, "Hello?" into the empty room. The reflection didn't answer. I laughed nervously, trying to shoo away the fear. I reached out and touched the mirror's surface. Cool glass met my fingertips. Just a mirror. Just a reflection. Nothing more. But as I turned to walk away, I swore I saw it. A flicker of movement that wasn't mine. A second face, just behind me. Gone when I spun around. I forced myself to sleep that night with the blanket pulled over my head like I was 5 years old again. The next morning, everything seemed normal. The reflection smiled when I did. Moved when I moved. Blinked in time. Maybe I dreamed it all. Maybe I was spiraling over nothing. But as I pulled my hair back into a ponytail before school, I noticed something. A shadow of a smile tugged at my lips, the beginning of a grin. And in the mirror, my reflection was already smiling wide. Too wide. She was waiting for me. And deep in my chest, I felt it. This wasn't the last time she would. At first, I tried to convince myself it was stress, exams, hormones, anything. But the moment I stood in front of that mirror the next morning, I knew something was wrong. I didn't look tired. I looked studied, like something behind the glass was watching me sleep, memorizing every blink, every twitch, every subtle tilt of my head. I brushed my hair in the mirror, watching the reflection follow, but not immediately. There was a pause, a hesitation, so I started testing it. First, simple gestures. Raise my left hand. 1 Mississippi. The reflection followed. Blink twice quickly. a stutter, before she mirrored me. Then I turned my head rapidly to the left. Her head turned, but slower, as if she needed a second to understand the movement. It wasn't a coincidence. That night, I sat at my vanity with a notebook, recording times between my movements and hers. 10 tries. 8 of them had a delay, a second at most, sometimes barely noticeable. But it was there. Around midnight, as I stared blankly into the mirror, I heard it. A whisper, not from the room, from the vanity. It wasn't a word. It was more like a breath. Sharp, almost broken. I leaned in, heart thudding. "Hello?" I whispered again, like the night before. This time, I thought I saw her lips move. Just a tiny twitch. I slammed the drawer shut and backed away, knocking over a bottle of lotion that rolled to the floor. In school the next day, I told Clara and Jules about it, half laughing as if it were some spooky story I made up to pass the time. They laughed, told me to lay off the late-night horror binges. Clara even joked, "Next thing you'll say is the mirror winked at you." But it wasn't funny anymore. That afternoon, as sunlight poured through the window and warmed the wood of my dresser, I glanced up from homework and caught it. My reflection smirked. I didn't. I sat frozen, pen in hand, my breath caught. She had this knowing curve in her lips, a mocking little grin that disappeared the moment I moved, like she realized I saw her. That night, I didn't sleep. The air in my room felt different, heavier, like walking through thick fog. I left the vanity light off, pulled the curtains shut, and climbed into bed with a tight knot in my chest. Sometime after 2 a.m., I woke to a soft creak. My eyes adjusted to the dim glow from my nightlight, and my heart nearly stopped. My closet door was open, just a few inches. But I always shut it, always. I sat up slowly. The mirror across the room reflected nothing. No bed, no walls, no me. Just darkness. I slid out of bed, bare feet against the cold floor, and crept toward the vanity. The silence was so deep I could hear my own heartbeat. I reached for the switch and hesitated. The surface of the mirror looked foggy, like someone had breathed on it. Then, in the haze, movement. A shape began to form. A faint, white blur. No, a figure. A girl's face. Pale, hollow eyes. Still as death. I screamed and spun around. Nothing was behind me. Just my room. Just shadows and shelves. I turned back. There it was. A hand pressed against the inside of the glass. The skin was paper thin, almost gray, with long fingers and jagged nails. The mirror trembled, as if something was trying to push through. Panic surged through me. I grabbed the sides of the mirror and pulled it from the wall. It was heavier than I remembered. Too heavy. The wood cracked in my hands, splinters digging into my palms. I heaved it sideways, ready to smash it on the floor, but the glass held firm, solid, cold, unmoving. I stared into it, breathing hard. The hand was gone, but her face was still there, right behind mine, blending in with my reflection. And her smile, it wasn't mocking anymore. It was patient. That night, I didn't scream. I didn't sleep. I just watched her watching me, waiting for her next delay, waiting for me to move first. I kept the mirror covered for 2 days. A floral bedsheet, thick and heavy, draped over it like a curtain in an abandoned theater. I thought it would help. Thought maybe not seeing her would quiet my thoughts. But it didn't. If anything, it made things worse. Every time I passed the vanity, I felt her. I could hear the soft creak of the dresser, the subtle shift of the frame against the wall, as if it was breathing under the sheet. Sometimes, I caught my own shape beneath the fabric, but it moved when I didn't. By the 3rd night, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to look. It was just after midnight. My room was silent, cloaked in the blue shadow of moonlight. I approached the mirror slowly and peeled the sheet away. My breath caught. She wasn't there. No reflection. No room. Just black. An unnatural, swallowing black. not like an unlit room, but like staring into something that absorbed light. I touched the glass. It was cold, slick, too smooth. I moved my hand across it, looking for any hint of myself. And then, the fog began to rise. It started like a smear in the center, then spread outwards like breath on frozen glass. Shapes twisted inside it, smudged, crawling. And then I saw it. A face. Directly behind mine in the mirror. Not beside me. Not over my shoulder. Behind my reflection. She didn't move. Didn't blink. Her eyes, or what used to be eyes, were just hollow sockets. Darker than the black behind her. Her skin looked stretched thin, like damp paper, barely clinging to her skull. I gasped and turned around. Nothing. I was alone. But when I turned back, the mirror was no longer smooth. There were fingerprints on the inside, long, smeared prints pressing outward, dragging along the surface as if she was trying to trace her way out. I stumbled back and nearly tripped over my chair. I grabbed the sides of the mirror and yanked. It barely budged. It was bolted into the wall, but not like it used to be. It felt fused, heavy, like it had sunk its weight into the room itself. I pulled harder, and the wood around the corners groaned and splintered. Then, it happened again. A hand. Pressed flat against the glass, right over my face. It was thin, gray, with fingernails cracked and blackened. The skin pulsed like it was alive, or once had been. I watched in terror as a second hand joined the first. Then the tips of fingers began tapping from the inside. No sound, just the visual, rhythmic, steady, deliberate. She was knocking. I screamed and backed away, covering the mirror again with shaking hands. My heart thudded against my ribs, my lungs grasping at air. But I couldn't look away from the shape under the sheet. The tapping never stopped. Even through the cover, the glass pulsed gently, like a heartbeat. That night, I didn't turn off the lights. I stayed curled in my bed with my eyes wide open, watching the mirror from under my blanket. At 3:03 a.m., the sheet shifted. Not from the breeze, not from gravity, from something inside. The fabric lifted slightly, and I swear, for just 1 second, I saw the outline of her head pressing from within. She was closer now. I knew then. She wasn't trapped behind the glass. She was waiting for the right moment to get out, and I had just invited her closer. The dreams started soon after the tapping stopped. Not nightmares exactly, just flashes. Images that didn't belong to me. A hallway lined with rotting wallpaper. A child's room with cracked toys scattered across the floor. A girl, no older than I had been in 5th grade, staring into a mirror that looked exactly like mine. Her eyes were wide and wet. Her ribbon, red like mine, was frayed at the ends. I would wake breathless, disoriented, unsure of what was real. And always facing the mirror. It was like something had shifted. The boundary between the mirror and my mind had blurred. The more I tried to ignore it, the more the images intruded. In my sleep, in my reflection, even when I closed my eyes just to blink. It wasn't just a face behind the glass anymore. It was a memory, and it wasn't mine. One afternoon, I sat hunched over the vanity, scribbling down what little I could remember from the dreams. I kept seeing that same old house, its windows boarded, its lawn overtaken with weeds. It looked familiar in the way an echo sounds familiar. I needed to know more. I started researching, first just online. Antique mirror legends, haunted objects, reflections with their own lives. But then I got specific. I searched for the house. I couldn't shake the feeling that the mirror wasn't just cursed or haunted. It had history. Finally, I found something. A demolition record. 30 years ago, a remote estate burned down after a series of unexplained events. Only one photo survived. A wide staircase, a chandelier, and at the far end, a wall with a cracked mirror mounted above a fireplace. It was the same one. No owners listed. No survivors mentioned. Just property cleared. Items salvageable. I slammed the laptop shut and ran to the mirror. For the first time in days, I stared into it without flinching. She wasn't there, not visibly, but I saw it in the details. My eye twitched from nerves. The reflections didn't. I bit my lip. She smiled. She was playing a game, mimicking me where she wanted, freezing when she didn't. The rules weren't mine anymore. That night, I brushed my teeth with my head down, avoiding every reflective surface. But when I looked up, something tugged at my stomach. In the bathroom mirror, just behind my shoulder, was my bedroom. Not the hallway, not the sink. My bedroom. The mirror wasn't just showing reflections now, it was bleeding through. When I turned around, I was still in the bathroom. But in the glass, the view showed my dresser, my clutter, my ribbon, and her. She was standing beside the vanity, looking directly at me. I backed away slowly, my breath tight and uneven. By the time I reached my room, everything was still, but the mirror was uncovered, and my ribbon was resting on the vanity, tied in a knot I didn't make. She wanted me to remember. And worse, she wanted me to see through her eyes, to know what it was like to be forgotten, to be trapped. It was buried at the bottom of a shoebox I hadn't touched in years. I found it while tearing through my closet, looking for anything that might explain how the mirror came into my life. Old photos, diaries, birthday cards. I was searching for a thread, a memory I could pull to unravel this nightmare. And that's when I found the ribbon. Red, faded, frayed at the ends. It used to be my favorite. I wore it every day in first grade, until it vanished. I cried for a week, swore someone had stolen it, but my parents insisted I'd lost it on the bus. And now, here it was, inside a box I never remembered packing, stained with something dark. The moment I touched it, my skin prickled. I stood in front of the mirror, holding it up. The reflection was still, just me. Tired eyes, shaky hands, the ribbon draped loosely in one palm. Slowly, I brought it to my hair and tied it. Tight. The reaction was instant. Her eyes, the reflection's eyes, went wide in horror. She stepped back in the mirror's frame, almost as if recoiling. But I hadn't moved. My heart dropped. My breath froze in my throat. She hated it. That night, I couldn't take it anymore. I turned the mirror to face the wall, draped it again. I even tried sleeping with music playing, the volume turned just high enough to drown out any whispers. But none of it worked. At 3:09 a.m., I woke to an icy wind in my room. My window was shut. The heater was off. Yet the air felt thick and cold, every breath harder to take than the last. I sat up, and I saw it. The mirror, completely uncovered. I didn't move it. No one did. I stepped toward it, trembling. My reflection stared back. But this time, it wasn't in the outfit I wore. It was wearing a version of my dress. Same fabric, same color, but torn, soaked at the hem with what looked like dried blood. The bow in her hair was twisted, the red darker now, stained. She lifted her hand, slowly, deliberately, and placed a single finger against the glass. It shuddered. The surface didn't crack. It rippled. Like the mirror had stopped being glass and become something living, something breathing. I leaned in, just inches away, trying to understand what I was seeing. That's when the mirror exhaled. A gust of cold air poured out from the surface, blowing the curtain beside it outward. My hair lifted, my eyes burned. It was breathing me in. I stumbled back. The lights flickered. The vanity bulbs blew out in a violent pop. In the brief flash before darkness, I saw her step closer to the inside of the glass. Not as a reflection, but as herself. The ribbon around her neck tightened, twisting unnaturally like it had a mind of its own. Her mouth opened wide, wider than humanly possible, and from it came a sound that didn't belong in this world. Wet, layered, sharp. I screamed, but no one heard. The air froze. The mirror fogged again, and when it cleared, she was gone. But the ribbon, the one I had just worn, was now tied neatly around the vanity knob. tighter, stained darker, waiting. I stopped sleeping, not because I was scared, though I was, but because every time I closed my eyes, I woke up in front of the mirror. It didn't matter where I drifted off. Couch, bed, even the bathtub once. I'd open my eyes, and there I'd be, kneeling before the glass, arms limp at my sides, staring at her. Bruised fingers, dried blood under my nails. Sometimes I'd find scratches on my cheeks. Other times, my own ribbon tied too tight in my hair, cutting into the scalp. And the reflection. She wasn't mimicking anymore. She was me, but slightly off. Her eyes blinked out of sync. Her posture was straighter, more poised, more practiced. And she smiled when I cried. I knew I had to destroy it. I waited until daylight, when the shadows receded and the air didn't feel so thick. I closed the door, grabbed the metal lamp base from my desk, and stepped in front of the mirror. She was already waiting. No movement, no smirk, just stillness. My hands shook as I raised the lamp. "You don't belong here," I whispered, voice breaking. "You're not me." And I swung. The blow echoed through the room. The glass didn't shatter, not even a crack. I hit again, and again. Nothing. Only when I grabbed a shard from the box cutter in my drawer and dragged it across the glass did the cracks finally form. But not where I cut. They spiderwebbed around her. The reflection behind the glass didn't flinch, didn't blink. She smiled. That night, Clara and Jules came over. I hadn't told them everything, just that I was having episodes, blackouts, that maybe I needed company. They humored me, ate popcorn, watched bad horror films, made jokes to fill the silence. At one point, I went to the bathroom. When I returned, they were standing side by side in front of the mirror, not speaking, not blinking. "Hey," I said. They didn't move. I walked closer and saw them still laughing on my bed in the real room, but their reflections were standing behind me in the glass, blank-faced, pale, watching. I screamed, and the mirror rippled. The figures in the glass disappeared. The room flickered like a faulty light bulb. When Clara and Jules ran in, asking what happened, I couldn't answer. I just pointed to the mirror, now calm, now cold, like it hadn't just shown me a version of them I knew wasn't real. That night, I blacked out again. Woke up on my knees, fingers purple and stiff. The mirror glowing faintly with that strange internal light, not reflecting anything anymore, just showing. Inside I saw my room, but twisted, darker. The walls bowed outward like a funhouse. A figure walked across my floor in that version, dragging something heavy. It was me, or her, dragging a body with my face. I screamed and pounded the mirror with both fists. My voice was gone, and then I watched myself walk away from the mirror. The reflection, the other Lila, sat calmly at the vanity, brushed her hair and turned to look at me. She mouthed the words, "You're almost ready," and smiled. I don't remember falling asleep. I only remember waking up, not in bed, not even in the hallway, but standing, in front of the mirror, again. My legs trembled beneath me. The carpet felt damp, as if something had soaked into the floor. The air was electric, like the breath before a lightning strike. And there she was, inside the mirror, watching me. Her skin was bone pale now, stretched too tightly across her cheeks. Long, tangled black hair clung to her face, and the ribbon, my ribbon, was knotted around her neck, soaked through, no longer red but the color of dried rust. Her eyes gleamed, wide and hollow, and then I saw through them. I blinked, and for a flash, I was looking out from inside the glass. I saw myself, curled in bed, mouth slightly open, breathing slow, vulnerable. My chest rose and fell like nothing was wrong. But it wasn't me. It was her. The view from the other side. I stepped back, gasping. The mirror pulsed. Then she whispered, "My name, Lila." It was soft, almost kind. I staggered away, breath ragged. She didn't move, just tilted her head like she was studying a puzzle. I grabbed the closest object, the metal lamp again, and lunged. I struck the glass. A burst of energy exploded from it, unseen but felt, like being hit in the chest by 100 icy hands. I flew backward, slammed against the wall. The light bulbs burst. The room went dark. When I opened my eyes, the mirror was shattered, but only in the frame. The surface was still intact, unbroken, and she was no longer inside. She was stepping out. One bare foot, then another, dragging across the hardwood floor with a slick, wet sound. She emerged fully. That smile stretched too wide, her eyes glinting with something that wasn't human. She reached toward me. I scrambled to my feet, but I couldn't run. My limbs felt disconnected, distant. Her hand brushed my cheek, and then I was pulled. Not physically, not at first, but my reflection shifted. I was behind the glass. My arms were still, my mouth wide in a scream that made no sound. My room was on the other side now, hazy, unreachable. I pounded on the glass. I screamed until my throat tore. She, the new Lila, tilted her head, adjusted the ribbon at her neck in the mirror's reflection, and smiled at me. Then she turned away, walked to the bed, laid down, and fell asleep. And the mirror? It showed a perfect reflection. Just a girl sleeping peacefully in her room. But inside, I'm here. Still. Trapped. Watching. Waiting. And when you stare too long into the mirror, be careful who blinks last.